What time are we at? We're probably ready to start now? No one else trickling in? All right, cool. So, hi everybody. Welcome to Automating Hashtopolis. Probably one of the drier talks here, so I apologize. I promise to make it fun, sort of. So, legal makes me read this disclaimer out because I like to talk about stuff that they don't approve of. So, this talk has not been vetted by IBM Security, or X-Force Red. Opinions expressed in this talk are mine and mine alone. I'm not speaking on behalf of Hashcat, Hashtopolis, Team Hashcat, the Church of Wi-Fi, SoundAssure Prime, the Illuminati, or Bigfoot. There's no warranties expressed or implied. I'm not responsible if you set your house on fire, break your Hashtopolis instance, blow up your database, severely break something, get yourself fired, and or start a fire in your house. Please seek the assistance of a professional before doing this in production. So, who I am. Nobody really cares, but I'm Evil Mog, Bishop of the Church of Wi-Fi, hacker of X-Force Red, member of Team Hashcat, and apparently at CCDC I'm also Rear Admiral Evil. But nobody really cares. Why are you here? Well, Hashtopolis is awesome. Hashtopolis manages Hashcat, and Hashtopolis can be automated with JSON, and that's right, you all can be lazy. You can automate your next assessment. Save you time, save me time, and we all get back to drinking beer. So, a little bit of Hashtopolis terminology for those of you who don't know what Hashtopolis is. Actually, I'll start with what Hashtopolis is. Hashtopolis is a Hashcat management solution that manages all your Hashcat instances so you can handle your clustering from one node all the way up to 20 nodes. Or even bigger than that. The largest I've done in production was a 200-node cluster, but that's a whole different story. So in Hashcat world, an agent is a Hashcat worker node. Trust is an agent that's trusted to download secret hash lists. A secret is a hash list that cannot be sent to untrusted agents. A task is a Hashcat job. A hash list is the list of hashes. Hashcat's an awesome password cracker. If you haven't used it before, thanks, Adam. And Hashtopolis manages Hashcat to distribute work thanks to S3, Hops, WinXP, and everyone else from CSP. So, to get started with automating Hashtopolis, you have to install Hashtopolis. Just like to understand recursion, you first have to understand recursion. So download it, install it, tune your database. Then you have to go generate an API key. You go to Users, API Management, click New Key. It's fairly simple. Then you should probably read the Hashtopolis PDF, which is long, boring, and dry, so I automated all of that and actually wrote the bindings for you. You make a new directory for your project. In that directory, clone this repo as a submodule, question marks, and then profit. Relatively simple. But let's get into the details of what we're actually talking about, because this is all fluff so far. First thing you do is you create a config.json file, tell it where your Hashtopolis instance is, in this case http://mog.isawesome.ninja on 8443. You tell it whether you want to verify the certificate or not. I'm lazy, I don't. Don't do as I do. Verify your certificate, give it a path. You can come on in if you want. No? Alright, whatever. API key, you give it an API key and you close out your JSON. Relatively simple. Next, we're going to make a little simple Python script that imports my HTTP client functions. From HTTP client.functions import star. X equals test connection, print X. If it gives you success, you've connected to your Hashtopolis instance properly. Now this doesn't validate your API key, this just makes sure your HTTP instance is actually alive. So, hey, come on in, sit down, relax. Just getting started. So, once you've done your access connection, here's what it looks like in the back end. Everything in managing Hashtopolis is all done over simple JSON. So you can use my bindings, you can write this in PowerShell, you can write this in Ruby, you can even write it in Brainfuck if you want. I really don't care, just make sure it works. So this is the boring section of the documentation that shows what the JSON looks like. It's really simple. Here's a section, test, request, connection, simple response. Now let's make sure your API key works. Same as before, you run a functions import star, you run a test connection, and then you test your access. Print the results. Fairly simple, nothing earth-shattering. A monkey can do this part. But the access check under the hood, it gets a little more complicated. At this point, you have to add an access key to the list as opposed to a response. But like I said, all this is abstracted with the Hashtopolis Python bindings on my GitHub, which I'll show at the end, along with a couple of scripts so you can automate things. So standard access check, it tells you, is your API key good, is it not? Relatively simple. Now here's where the fun stuff happens. How many of you had to go create, say, a couple hundred hash lists? It happens on an engagement. You get stuff out of crackcomp exec. In this case, all we're doing is we're importing base 64. We're going to open up your example 0.hash from the Hashcat example files. We're going to read it in. We're going to base64 encode it. From there, we're going to run the create hash list function. In this case, you give it a name. You tell it whether it's salted or not. You tell it if it's secret or not. You specify if it's got a hex salt, which is not applicable to almost everything you're running if you're running NTLM. You tell it the separator, which is a standard colon. Hash format in this case is going to be 0, which is MD5. We'll tell it the hash type ID, which is also a 0, which means straight word list. Apply it to an access group in Hashtopolis. We're not using brain. We're not using any other funky features, so we give it a false and a 0. Give it the result. And under the hood, it's a little bit more JSON, relatively simple. You guys could write this whole thing in burp and automate with burp for all I care, but it works. So it's just specify your section, which is a hash list, create hash list, API hash list, whether it's salted, secret. All the fun stuff I just covered gives you back an OK. It's just going through and taking all this documentation, adding it to a Python binding, takes time. So what's cool, though, is now that you've created a hash list, you can create 100 tasks. So normally in Hashtopolis, when you've got a giant task list, you can just specify a task file. The problem is when you're distributing that using skip and limit, you can't do that. So you have to go create 100 different hash lists and say Hashtopolis. That's not exactly the most, best use of my time. So with this example script, for example, we can take the pathwell masks, which are the top 100 masks that CoreLogic built up. So you go specify a hash list ID, which is hash list number 1, which is the hash list we just created. Start priorities, call it about 102. Tell it you're going to use a speed for a benchmark. Have it open up your pathwell.txt file. Then read through your pathwell file. So you specify a priority, decrement it by 1 every time. You tell it your mask to go strip up the line files. You run a simple new task equals create task. Tell it what you want to use for its names. Tell it the hash list ID, and then you add in your attack type. So in here you see it pound HL3-A3. What that means is when you see a pound HL in Hashtopolis, that means you're calling hashcat. -A3 is attack mode 3, so you're using the brute force or mask attack function. Then we're adding in our mask here that we added from the pathwell masks. You're giving it a 1200 second runtime, specifying your benchmarks and your colors, and bang, it creates all your tasks. You've just created 100 tasks inside Hashtopolis without having to manually click through them all. So say you're running a pack attack, you can go add in 1,000 masks or whatever masks you want, and Hashtopolis will just happily distribute them out to your worker nodes. Relatively simple. It's actually kind of cool. Now there's been times when you've created all these stupid tasks and you want to go delete them all. Well, you can do that with Hashtopolis automation in Python as well now. You run a quick list task from the Python bindings, run a line for your task list, and then you go call delete task on that task ID. Print out the results, and all of a sudden you've deleted all your tasks. So you've got that functionality, which is actually really handy when you've added 1,000+ tasks and you realize you screwed up during Crack Me If You Can. This has happened. What's even cooler now is you can specify a function to go look up all your cracked tasks or your cracked hashes in Hashcat, or in Hashtopolis specifically, including stats like where it was cracked in the position. So if you've got a bunch of analysts, pen testers, what have you, and they're cracking hashes, and they want to go pull hashes out of NTLM, like, hey, has this hash already been cracked? They can call it and query your Hashtopolis instance. So just run a quick get hash, give it the hash list, it gives you back your results in straight JSON. And for the whole Hashcat automation components, I did not do any of the JSON parsing except for your test and your access connections. And that's purely because I want you to be able to see what kind of data you're getting back, as opposed to trying to have a brain and mess it up for you. That's not my purpose. So if you want to get details in the hash list, easy. We have a get hash list function here. In this case, it returns back everything you need to know about the hash list. Is it salted? What the hash list name is? Hash counts? How many you've cracked? Hash list separators? Group IDs? Etc. Etc. Which is, one of the other funky functions I've had to do at times is who knows what hashes you even have in your Hashtopolis instance. And what's cooler is you can get a list of every cracked hash from Hashtopolis. Right now, this one's really ugly because it just displays it all in JSON. My next slide is going to show you how to parse it all so you can query Hashcat, or Hashtopolis specifically, get a complete dump of your candidate.list, and then use it for other nefarious purposes. So in this case, we're just doing quick hashes, get hash list cracked, which is kind of boring. So to do this correctly, we're going to import our hash list function again, HTTP client, HPI, whatever, import star, run a hash list, get hash list cracked. Then for hash in hashes, you run a quick print the hash and print the hash plain, add a colon separator in there, and all of a sudden you've got a hashcat.pot file. Nice and easy. Rather than in Hashtopolis right now, you got a maximum of 1,000 ones you can get out when showing the hash list results, and you have to go copy and paste, go to the next screen and everything else. This automates that whole process for you in 4 lines of Python, which is fantastic. You can get task details, which is also handy. So we've got the get task ID. It'll tell you everything about your task, where its image URLs are, how much has been dispatched. You name it, you can pull it out of here, which is actually kind of cool. Again, everything's JSON, so it's parsable. I mean, you can do this stuff in burp, it's just I'm lazy with Python. You can list your files, which is handy when you're creating your tasks. So in Hashcat, when you create a task, you have to specify a file list. So if we go back to, where was I? Yeah, so there's a set of brackets right down near the end, right after string priority, bracket, false. That's where you put all of your files in when you are creating a word list mode. So things like rocku, etc. So if you want to get a list of those files before you go and run this, you run some quick Python, say print me all the files and their file IDs. So you can specify, hey, I want rocku 30,000.rule, I want your rocku.txt, etc. to be added into your files. So it's actually kind of handy in that regard. This one returns just back a simple example.dict in number 1. So you know you need file ID number 1 for your evil later on. This comes in handy when you're doing things like, I want to create a hashcat task for every one of my rules and every one of my word lists. So say you've got 100 word lists and 200 rules, you can create 2,000 or 20,000 tasks pretty much instantly using the API, which is kind of cool. You can also get a user list, which is handy, and display their details. So you can get things like the user ID, usernames, emails, right group IDs, last logon is valid, etc. So this script is handy when I'm running ID automation, because in a large organization, they make you certify every user in your instance is who they say they are. So we had to build this into our IDM processes to figure out who everybody was. So you do stuff like this. Sorry. Also, don't focus on all this code because I've actually posted all of this on my GitHub in a nice, easy, wiki accessible format as to how these all actually work. So I remember at CypherCon, people were furiously writing stuff down. No, it's all on my GitHub, and I'll post that here in a few minutes once this is all done. So the results of this is kind of cool. You get back your email, what right group your ID in. Now, a right group in Hashtopolis is whether you're an admin, regular user, what permission set you've had applied to you. You can do things like, I can only view hash lists and not submit them, or I can only view certain tasks and not submit them. So you can add those functionality in, and that's what a right group ID is. You can modify those. What's cooler, though, is if you need to go create 100 users, like you would in, say, a large MSP, you can automatically create your users using the Hashtopolis API. So in this case, we're specifying a username, email, what right group ID they are. Now, the weird part about Hashtopolis is you have to create the user first, and then you have to set their password. It's kind of stupid. So in this case, we're going create user, here's their username. We're then listing the users, and then this 4-line in users, we're basically resetting everyone's password to password. I've had times where you had to go spin up, a random or a system with a couple hundred IDs just for a class, for example, and this comes in handy for adding your users in. The other cool part is if you are automating your system, say in a cloud instance with Hashtopolis, there's this concept called a voucher. Now, a voucher allows an agent to sign into Hashtopolis initially when it first registers. Sometimes you'll have to go through and create these dynamically, say in a Terraform script, for example. So in this case, we just do a quick import, create agent voucher random, get a list of the vouchers, and print the vouchers out. As long as you add 1 voucher per agent, you can register a couple hundred agents relatively rapidly rather than the manual process of copy things over, edit your client JSON files, pop in your API keys. This way now it's just a quick automatic. You can then paste that into Terraform and do your thing. The other cool thing is you can do stuff like changing your configuration values. So for example, Hashtopolis has a requirement to go donate right at the bottom. It displays this giant, donate money to S3 and the CSP crew. You can turn that off by API. So if you tear down an instance as often as I do, I have a preset batch of configurations that I like to apply. So in this case, we're telling it, force in this case means, change it regardless, even if there's an error. So we're setting that to false. We're setting our donate equals get config of what the donate value is, so we can go print it. From there, we're going to set config donate off. set your value to execute it, and away you go. You're done. And then all of a sudden your donate value is now set to true instead of false. And what that does is it disables the bar at the bottom. You can use this for configuring things like the number of seconds on your agents wait for check-ins. There's a number of values in Hashtopolis you can change with this, so this is kind of handy for adjusting those values. You do things like listing your configuration settings, cracking tasks, YubiKey, fine-tuning, UI, server, multicast, notifications, etc., etc. That's handy. You can also list what configuration items you can change using your configuration items list config, which is handy as hell. And as far as I know, no one's really automating Hashtopolis or most hash cracking operations. They either write their own tool work or their own framework, or they'll use Hashtopolis, but they'll do it all manually. And if you're cracking as many hashes as I am, I automate everything. I mean, there's no point clicking a little button and adjusting things. This one is handy. This is worth its weight in gold. So in Hashtopolis, if you screw up your task, it will disable all of your agents, and you have to manually go through them all and click to disable them. It is a pain in the ass. Anyone who's dealt with Hashtopolis has had to deal with this. So this little script will save your bacon. You're going to click from HTTP clients.functions import star, agents equals list agents. That gives you your list of your agents. We're going to loop through them all. We're going to go unassign their current agent using the task unassign agent. We're going to set them to CPU only, which is false, which means their GPU nodes be corrected properly. We'll reset them to trusted, and then we'll set them to use optimized kernels, which have a length limitation, but they're faster, and their workload profile correctly. Reset the agent to active, and away you go. You keep this thing on a cron job, and it will fix your jobs at 3 in the morning when something randomly breaks because it's changed to the wrong agent. You can actually use this to go monitor your tasks, and if there's an issue, you can delete the task or deprioritize it, then re-enable the agents. So this is handy for non-stop operations. Just an example of stuff you should probably be doing. And that's really it. I'm going to go pull up the actual code after all this, so ignore the fact that this is the end. And then we'll show you some of the cool things that we can do with the scripts that I've written. But end of the day, hit me up on Twitter on evil_mog. Check out the GitHub repo of Hashtopolis, the user API, as well as my GitHub repo, evilmog/HTTP client API. I have all of this documented. I have no problem answering questions. Donate to the Hashtopolis folks because they need beer and no one actually gives them money. Special thanks to S3 and crew because they save my bacon routinely, and special thanks to Adam for writing Hashcat. Now on that note, is there anything anybody wants to see automated in Hashtopolis? Because I have all the time in the world. Because that was a quick 20-minute run through of all the stupid stuff. So I'm here to tell you everything you want to know or don't want to know. So let me go get this all nice and big, for example. All right. I can see for the most part. cd git. All right, so, hey, welcome. You just came into the end. I can repeat this whole thing because it's quick. Sorry, this thing was originally written as a 45-minute talk, and then somehow magically it sliced down to 15, 20 minutes because I talk fast. So, cool thing, like I said, we covered off the create user script, which is really handy. So you can go create users, works like hot damn. Handy thing I've been known to do is shit like, the reactivate scripts are handy. Get hash list, for example. See if my code actually works, or if the internet works. I might be demo failed anyways. Really? Are you fucking kidding me? Pardon my language. I apologize. I'm offended. That's right, I blame the conference. Oh, there we go. Expired access key. Fantastic. Well, let's go show you what the API key looks like, because why not? So this is Hashtopolis, by the way, if you guys have never seen this. Yes, ignore my security fails. Do as I say, not as I do. Security's hard. Come on. Woohoo, I think. All right, Evil Mog. I like beer or I like goats. Magical password works every time. So, when I was talking about Hashtopolis earlier, here is your agents, for example. Hey, come on in, welcome. We're doing the brief tour. So this is all stuff from the GUI. I mean, I hate clicking on GUIs. Who here hates a GUI? Yeah, see, someone's saying, you hate GUIs too. I like everything from the CLI. So I'm actually writing a tool here soon that will allow me to do this whole thing from the CLI. So you don't have to script it, it'll pre-script it for you. So here is an agent. It's a standard node that cracks passwords. Here is a task. So an example. So if I want to go create, say, a new task, manually creating a whole whack load of frickin' tasks, like, hey, I want to go crack example dict -A0 is how you manually have to go type things, if I can type, and test. So everything in here in the GUI is fully expressed via the API. It's actually really freaking handy. Mostly because I hate, as I said before, I absolutely hate GUIs. So you do things like looking up hashes in the hash list. Those are all fully available. So we got like a search hash, for example. That's a possible function. Those are handy. But the important thing I was getting into was your API management. So the first thing you do when you log into Hashcat, or Hashtopolis, is you create a new API. See this big API key? It's expired, thankfully. I'm going to fix that, because why not? This whole thing's being recorded anyways, so my API keys are available for the internet. These will be canceled by tomorrow, so thank you all. Come on. There we go. So yeah, it's expired as of the 11th, so let's go change this to, what's the date today, the 17th? Yeah, let's expire this on the 18th, because what the hell? You're not going to have this video up by tomorrow, are you? Perfect. You can go abuse my Hashtopolis instance with nothing hooked up to it. Thank you, Internet. So, let's go try this again, shall we? Oh, look, let's get the hash list. There we go. See, now stuff actually randomly works. I'm not just blowing smoke up your butts. So yeah, those are all kind of handy. Like I said, cool scripts like your Python test.py. Hey, your access connections all work. So let's go create a hash list, shall we? Because why not? Cat create hash list. See what this actually does. Oh, this example 0 to hash. Is this thing actually in here? Yeah. All right. I have a hashcat example. The hash. There. So, to prove there's not anything up my ass here, we'll go show the hash list. There's only one hash list. The internet's hard. Live demos suck, but this works. So here's our example of .hash. We want to go create a new one. So let's go Python, create hash list. Give it a second. It should upload all its fun stuff. There we go. And now we go to our hash lists. Voila, we have two. This code actually works, I swear. I'm not full of crap. Is there anyone here who cracks hashes on a routine basis? Is there anything cool you want to see automated in Hashtopolis live? Because I feel like demoing live here today. I feel like living dangerously.
Show me how to get results fast, like real-world results. I feel like I'm constantly spinning my wheels and I'm not getting any cracked hashes.
Okay, what kind of hashes do you crack?
Wi-Fi password.
You poor bastard.
Yeah.
There's half the problem. So Wi-Fi is what's called a slow hash. So a fast hash is stuff like NTLM, SHA-1, etc. And you can use advanced techniques like raking. You can do the A1 style of attacks. To put this in perspective, 8 GTX 1080s will do about 600 billion NTLM keys per second. On Wi-Fi, it'll do about 100 kilohashes per second. It's really freaking slow. So your only real option, sadly, is dictionaries. The really long ones without much words, or using like Best64. Wi-Fi really sucks, so I'm sorry. Anybody else have something more reasonable to go try and implement? Because I can turn this into a straight-up Hashcat talk all day long, Q&A, because this is what I do. So yes? Perfect. That's fantastic. So first thing you're going to do is, have you ever heard of PAC? I don't know what PAC is. Or Pathwell, rather. Sorry. No? All right. So, core logic, Pathwell. These masks should be able to be run by most GPUs. How many GPUs do you have?
2.
Perfect. What kind? What speed? That'll work. It'll take you about a week. Just bear in mind that mask 76 on this is a pain in the ass, so don't, but path well. So one technique you can do is you can do what's called a path well topology. What a path well topology is my friend Minga went through and he figured out there was 100 or so hashes that crack 90% of the hashes that you'll see in an Active Directory engagement. And this is about, let's call it 5 years old now, but it's still highly effective. So there's this giant list of hashes. And it scrolls all the way down. Number 76 sucks, but all the rest of them are awesome. So what we have is I have a file here called pathwell.txt. It's just a bunch of random hashes, right? We're going to create a pathwell attack path. Now, bear in mind this Hashtopolis instance has no actual workers on it, so it's not going to do crap, but it will create the tasks for you. So, one thing you can do is, let's go create pathwell. Come on. star path star. There we go, pathwell.py. I don't name my stuff right as well, so I mean, I'm sorry, I'm lazy, just like the rest of you. But the pathwell.py file is going to be relatively simple. So we're going to set ourselves a hash list ID, set the priority, set your speeds. This here is where you put your pathwell.txt file. Relatively simple. We're going to read it. And we're going to basically create a task for every pathwell mask in there. So, Python pathwell.py. This is going to go through and create a whole bunch of tasks. And in Hashtopolis, you're going to see all these pathwell masks now created that didn't exist before. So that's kind of cool. You know, it shows you, hey, what's on there, and go create all these damn tasks. And that's kind of handy. The other things you can do is you can do what's called A1 style of attacks. So let's go create us an actual listing. First, let's go delete all these hashes. So let's go Python delete hash. There we go. Because I'm lazy and I don't like to have to manually add all these things. Nobody likes clicking delete hash, wait, delete hash, delete. That's what made Hashtopolis unbearable for years. Completely unbearable. I'm lazy. You should all be lazy too. So, now we're done that, I was going to go create a file list. So first thing you're doing when you're creating a listing is you create your list your files. So this tells me I've got one file on there, example0.dict. So cat create task. I thought I named this shit. There we go. That's I guess I have to go check my own slide deck now to figure out how I did this. Let's do this live, shall we? So we're going to scroll back to my create tasks. So if you're an Active Directory admin, this is cool. Anybody else, I'm sorry. Let's create hash list, create hash list. I guess I have to create a task then. Where are we? Alright, well, let's do this live then. Cat pathwell.txt. Nope. Cat pathwell.py. Copy the CP pathwell.py to create task.py. Cool, I'm adding this to my list. So, we're going to create our task. So we set our hash list ID, priority, blah, blah, blah. We don't care about the pathwell, don't care about that, don't care about that, don't care about that. And screw the new task. So we're going to go create an A3. We're going to change this to an A1 example0.task. Or .list. I'm going to delete this little bit of code here because that's crap. And then I'm going to change you to a attack mode 0. I'm going to delete this crap here. Example0.list. And that should do everything else nice and normal. Oh yeah, and we got to add file ID number 1. So where this file ID number 1 comes from is when I was running the file listing of here, it says my example0.dict, its file ID number is number 1. So you have to add that in your little brackets when we're creating our little file here, which was stored right there. And we're going to go run Python create task. Unexpected indent. Really? That's right, because I'm a jerk. I can fix that. Python's a hell of a drug. So, now that we're on this, congratulations, here's our nice new shiny task. So if you do this, you can actually, what's really handy on this is if you have a listing of, let's call it a couple hundred files, you can loop through all your task creations. So right now there is a nice little feature in here that says you can go create a bulk task import, but it's not quite flexible enough for my needs. So I like to just, you can go click through to automate creation of multiple tasks. I personally like to create, here's my 6 dictionaries in various orders. So I create 6 different super tasks, add them all together. Just manually create the tasks, add them to a super task, and away you go. So that's how I'd go create and automate my scripts. Because say you're doing an Active Directory assessment every 2 weeks, you're going to run the same exact attacks, most likely. You're going to run your attack mode 0s through all your various dictionaries, throw on all your rules. You're going to run attack mode 1, which is the combinator attack. Actually, we got time, don't we? We do. I have another presentation I think you guys would probably like while I'm here. Because fuck it. One sec. Where's my PowerPoint shit? Did this automate it? No. Never mind, it's on the other laptop. Damn it. I had one for how to go piss off fast hashes. Anyways, what you typically do is you run an attack mode A1. Now, attack mode A1 is legacy Hashcat mode had a, they didn't have a rule mode list added to it. They didn't have any kind of functionality for manually creating files. So basically, you had to take your word lists, run it through a tool called Expander. So you had shit like password, P at $, W0RD. It would turn into P, PA dollars, dollars. And then you had a left side and you had a right side. So you combine the left side with the right side, they'd match up together. It's called the password fingerprint attack. It's still useful today, oddly enough. So I run my attack mode A1 with Expander on my existing word lists. Then if you get bored, go Google rants by Chort with the cut B attack. It's called the Chinese takeout attack. It's deadly. So you know how most restaurants have, like, especially in Calgary, we have a massive Chinatown. And they're all like Wind Dragon or Golden Dragon, or they always come from the same 2 sets of kind of source words. We discovered that same thing with passwords. It's similar to an attack mode A1 with the Expander. What we do is we take, we do prefix pending and postfix pending slicing out using a tool called cut B. So you take all your password lists, like say Rock-U, for example, or your cracked passwords, you feed them into cut B, you take like 0 through 1, 0 through 2, 0 through 3. In fact, while I'm here, I'll blatantly plagiarize this shit. Thanks, Chort, you rock. I Google this all the time. Rants by Chort. He's got a great chart on this. Cut B. There we go. This article from 2012 will save your life. Best password cracking technique that nobody remembers. And it's actually in NetMux's new book that I helped contribute to. But what we're looking at is this little piece right. There we go. So what you do is you're doing a cut B, 0 through 3, you take into your combine.txt, you sort them all out. It gives you all your prefix padding and postfix padding. So I do this from 1 to 8 as opposed to his 3 through 6. But the effect on this is you get a whole bunch of words out of this that you can then combine to a left side and a right side that will crack all your scripts. So this guy is actually on my GitHub. I'll go post it for you. I actually wrote a script on this whole thing that automates all of it. In fact, while I'm talking about GitHub, random shenanigans, if you guys want to go try along at home because you're bored, and I'm sorry you can't sleep, but that's the only reason why you'd be doing this. There we go. Repos. You want my HTTP client API, probably. And in here, I think I have a wiki. No, there we go. It's got a full readme.md that walks you through all of this. So github.com/evilmog/HTTP client API, where you actually download the API. I actually have reasonable documentation. I'm sorry. I know the #1 rule is don't document your stuff, but I felt compelled because I was bored on an airplane. So anyways, I run my attack mode A1. Once you're done that, then we're going to do shit like what's called raking. Now, I think I've actually got a write-up on raking in my wiki here. I do, actually. Oh my god. I'm not lying. So, one thing you can do is, have you ever hit the end of an engagement where you've got, say, 70% hashes and you can't get beyond? So one of the techniques you can do is you can take all your word lists, and Hashcat has a generate random rules function. Say -G100,000, for example. You can then go specify a debug rule. Ignore this. At this point, we're so far off script, it's not even funny. So you can specify a debug rule now that basically specifies that you can, so if you specify --debug mode equals 4, and then you specify debug file, in the debug file it lists your base word, your finding rule, and it lists your completed word out of it. So you can literally grind over all of your word lists, and then figure out which random rules work and capture them. That's how generated2.rule in Hashcat was created. No humans looked at it. It was completely AI generated. So it's the first machine learning back in 2012. And it actually works. So when people say machine learning, it's just a computer trying random shit and us taking what fixes it. That's all it really is. Don't listen to these data scientists. They're all full of crap. So you can do that. Raking is one technique. Hybrid modes work as well. The pathwall masks. Have you ever heard of Prince Processor?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I love Prince Processor. There's a technique we use called Purple Rain. And, Prince, the purple one, etc. We thought it was funny. So Purple Rain, what it does is, if you take, normally when you run stuff through Prince, it gives you the same output every time. Try taking shuffle to your word list before you pipe it into Prince. And then you pipe that into Hashcat, you specify 100,000 random rules, turn on debug mode, and just let it catch everything. And let it sit there. When it fails, rerun it through with a fresh shuffle and try it again. So that's called Purple Rain. It's highly effective. And when you're collecting the rules it generates, it's called Purple Rain Barrel. The other thing you can do is called Princeception. Princeception, you can pipe Prince into itself, then into Hashcat. The thing is, Hashcat's fully pipelinable. 100%. So I call it the infinite monkey theory of password cracking, because infinite monkeys and infinite keyboards will eventually type your password. In my case, I can't afford monkeys because they're messy, so I have GPUs, which are good enough, and they're better than interns. So you take random things, you feed into Hashcat, and eventually you get actual really valid input. So random rules, using Princeception, shuffling your word list before it goes in. Non-deterministic input in a Hashcat cracking solution, well, especially on fast hashes, will actually speed your hash cracking rate. Now this doesn't work on slow hashes like WPA or bcrypt or Argon or scrypt. None of that crap works on that. Please don't try it. It'll take forever to crack. But when you're pushing 600 billion keys per second, you can afford to try stupid things and eventually have stuff work. So that's why cracking fast hashes and slow hashes are completely different. And that's how most people get to that 90-95% range, is they're fuzzing the randomly generated rules, or they're feeding bad input in, or we'll use Sewell on random websites, or I've been known to go into Wikipedia or Urban Dictionary to feed stuff in, or what else have we done that's really kind of funny? Bible verses work well. Nickelback lyrics work, oddly enough, very well. I don't know why, because nobody likes Nickelback. South Park movie listings, random slang from various things. C-SPAN text output, like the transcripts they have for the hearing impaired, that stuff being pumped into passwords works really well, oddly enough. Any place you can get text, I've piped IRC logs in to go crack passwords, and that gets results. Random lists of emojis occasionally work. Keyboard walks are effective. It depends who you're attacking, but the more profanity you put into your password list, oddly enough, the better. The number of people who put "I hate my fucking boss" in their password, like, if you ever do a corporate Active Directory assessment on a routine enough basis, you get to know people in a very intimate way that you're not sure if you should report some of the passwords that you see, because it's kind of ethically on that what do you do kind of line. But I've seen some pretty scary things in password dumps. Like, it's almost worse than doing OSINT, because you learn so much about your targets, and you're like, you can tell who's about ready to quit, who's not. It becomes a question of what you actually want to report. Any other random questions while I'm going off script for this? Because I can do this all day. Sure. KW generator. Adam wrote that a while ago. It's kind of documented in NetMux's book, Hashcrack 2. But basically, it depends on the keyboard you generate to. Because, like, say, a German keyboard is different from a US keyboard, which is different from a French-Canadian keyboard. But, so you have to kind of generate all of those. What's actually really effective is when you do a hybrid attack, so like an A6 attack on one side, with a piped KW walk on the other, and that gets kind of effective. Or you pipe that into, say, Combinator and pre-combinate. A lot of people do, like, NolaCon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, or ZAQ 1, 2, WSX at the end. So taking keyboard walk generator patterns and applying it either prefix, postfix, or as a combination combinator is actually highly effective. Anything else? Yeah.
Can you use Hashtopolis for the long-term list attacks rather than straight? So like
I mean, you can and you can't. Hashtopolis supports using prints in regular mode, but Hashtopolis, unfortunately, is primarily designed for stuff that you can handle hashcat only on. The non-deterministic attacks, like say generate 100,000 rules, unfortunately are done on host. There is a hashcat utility to generate 100,000 rules and then just upload that manually using, say, the API. But you kind of have to get around the limitations of that. So it's doable, it's just you have to be more creative. Which sucks. I mean, if you've got a node that's just doing nothing and you've got all the time in the world, then absolutely do it. Like my old crack technique didn't use skip and limit at all. I loaded up 12 different parallel techniques, most of which were random and had no end time and just sat there until stuff cracked. And the cool thing is Hashcat has what's called an induct and an output file mode. So -- induct, if you're doing a crack mode with, say, random rules, when it reaches the end of it, it will auto-pull in from that directory a new list of candidates to pipe through before it finishes. So if you have all this mounted, say, an NFS share by chance, and they're all outputting to common NFS, you can have multiple processes feeding each other and just sit there, which is actually kind of cool. No one does it anymore because there's better ways of doing it, but it's an old school way of getting effective. And sometimes old school is cool school. Anybody else? Cool, so I'm obviously boring enough. That's absolutely awesome. Hit me up on Twitter, and I'll be good enough to actually get my Twitter info again at the end of this, because God knows marketing will shoot me if I don't. And, come on. Woohoo, there we go. Yeah, I've got the eagle up because, it's America, and, I'm really Canadian, so I gotta be funny. So, clear. I'm Evil Mog on Twitter. That's who I am. Track me down. I'm lazy on the terminal. Sorry, not sorry. Thank you all for showing up to my talk. Hope it was mildly entertaining. And yes, this stupid princess sash is mandatory because of things and stuff. So have fun, be awesome, try random stuff. If you have questions, hit me up on Twitter, like all day, every day. I got no problem answering questions on Twitter, GitHub, post me random issues. As long as you find something that works, I don't care how dirty it is. Don't let anybody put you down for trying random stuff on Hashcat. That's what it's for. Thank you all. And sweet, I'm actually done on time. That made up for the other crew.